On February 4, 2025, a flight carrying a dozen migrants departed from Fort Bliss, Texas. Its destination, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. This marked the beginning of a controversial Trump administration policy, the deportation of migrants to the infamous military base. The move has drawn criticism from human rights groups, international organizations, and even some within the U.S. government. This essay will explore the details of this policy, its historical context, and the legal and ethical concerns it raises. The flight from Fort Bliss was the first of many planned deportations. The Trump administration aims to send up to 30,000 migrants to Guantanamo Bay in the coming months. The administration argues that this policy is necessary to deter illegal immigration and protect national security. They claim that the migrants being deported are criminal illegal aliens who pose a threat to the United States. However, critics argue that many of these migrants are asylum seekers fleeing violence and persecution. The policy has also raised concerns about due process and the right to a fair trial. Many of the migrants being deported have not been convicted of any crime. They are being held indefinitely without trial, in violation of international law. The Trump administration has defended its actions, claiming that the migrants are being held in accordance with U.S. law. However, legal experts have disputed this claim, arguing that the policy violates both domestic and international legal norms. The deportations to Guantanamo Bay are a stark reminder of the Trump administration's hardline stance on immigration. The policy has been widely condemned as inhumane and illegal. It remains to be seen how the situation will unfold, but one thing is clear: the deportations to Guantanamo are a stain on the conscience of America. The deportations to Guantanamo Bay are part of a broader Trump administration crackdown on immigration. In 2024, President Trump signed the Locke and Riley Act into law. This act, named after a Georgia nursing student murdered by a Venezuelan migrant, grants ICE the authority to detain migrants charged with even minor crimes pending trial. This has led to a dramatic increase in the number of migrants being detained in the United States. To accommodate the influx of detainees, the Trump administration has ordered the construction of a new migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay. This facility, separate from the existing military prison, will have a capacity for 30,000 people. The administration has defended the expansion, arguing that it is necessary to address the growing number of migrants entering the United States illegally. However, critics argue that the facility is nothing more than a concentration camp designed to punish and deter migrants. The expansion of Guantanamo Bay is a testament to the Trump administration's willingness to flout international law and norms. The use of Guantanamo Bay as a detention center for migrants has been condemned by the United Nations, the International Red Cross, and numerous human rights organizations. These organizations have called on the Trump administration to close the facility and end the detention of migrants without trial. Despite the international outcry, the Trump administration has shown no signs of backing down from its hardline immigration policies. The expansion of Guantanamo Bay is just the latest in a series of measures designed to make it more difficult for migrants to enter and remain in the United States. These policies are having a devastating impact on the lives of migrants and their families, and are undermining the United States' commitment to human rights. The international community has reacted with outrage to the Trump administration's decision to deport migrants to Guantanamo Bay. Cuba, which leases the land on which the base is located to the United States, has condemned the move as a violation of its sovereignty. Other countries have also voiced their opposition, including Canada, Mexico, and several European nations. The use of Guantanamo Bay as a detention center for migrants is not without precedent. In the 1990s, the Clinton administration used the base to detain Haitian and Cuban refugees fleeing political and economic turmoil. The conditions at the camp were widely criticized as inhumane, and the practice of detaining migrants without trial was condemned by human rights groups. The Trump administration's decision to revive this policy has drawn comparisons to the darkest chapters in American history. Critics have pointed to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II as an example of the dangers of scapegoating and detaining people based on their nationality or immigration status. They argue that the Trump administration's actions are driven by the same xenophobic impulses that led to these past injustices. The international community's condemnation of the Guantanamo deportations reflects a growing unease with the Trump administration's disregard for human rights and international law. The administration's actions have damaged America's reputation abroad and emboldened authoritarian leaders around the world. The legal and ethical implications of detaining migrants at Guantanamo Bay are complex and troubling. Critics argue that the policy violates both U.S. and international law, as well as basic human rights principles. They point out that Guantanamo Bay is a legal black hole, where detainees are denied many of the protections afforded to prisoners held on U.S. soil. One of the most pressing legal concerns is the indefinite detention of migrants without trial. The Trump administration argues that it has the authority to detain migrants indefinitely as part of its war on terror. However, legal experts argue that this claim is baseless, as many of the migrants being detained have no connection to terrorism. They also argue that indefinite detention without trial violates the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process. Beyond the legal questions, there are serious ethical concerns about detaining migrants at Guantanamo Bay. The facility has a long and sordid history of human rights abuses, including torture, abuse, and indefinite detention. Human rights groups argue that detaining migrants at Guantanamo will inevitably lead to more abuses. The Trump administration's decision to detain migrants at Guantanamo Bay has been met with widespread condemnation from human rights groups, legal experts, and the international community. Critics argue that the policy is illegal, immoral, and counterproductive. They call on the administration to close the facility and find a more humane and legal way to address the issue of migration.